So I'm going to try and screen share again and see whether I can get coming up. So this is a PowerPoint, obviously, about writing, but I want to review the piece of work that you've just done so that you can take a look at it. So we're looking at this idea again, actually, of cohesion and coherence. And I've written here, doing your knitting. And of course, what you're doing with these coherence and cohesion devices in your writing is kind of knitting together the words so that the words are in a pattern and that they make a coherent whole piece of work. Some of the things that you've sent me as drafts, they need those people who have written in bullet points. I can think of one piece of work, and I'm not going to mention names, but there is one piece of work which has a lot of bullet points in it, and bullet points are not good. Basically, you need sentences. So if you've got bullet points, you really need to listen. Why do you have these cohesion and coherence devices? Well, we've talked about them before. They make life easy for your reader. They persuade your reader you're right, and they help to keep your writing on track. And what are they? Well, they are things like pronouns, and of course we've just mentioned pronouns. So typically you would use we, and you might use I, but that would be in your own problem formulation. You use synonyms. These are words that mean the same as. So you try to find words that mean the same as each other, an alternative to a word, to make your writing more interesting. You can use, when you are writing, to make your writing more interesting or make it more precise. That's very important also for 4th semester and 5th semester. But when you're trying to make your writing more precise, you can use parenthetical explanation. And that's 2 big words, and you think, what the hell does that mean? And I don't blame you. What it means is when you say the same thing twice. So if you say, Mr. Bill, the English teacher, talks a lot, all right, you would have to write Mr. Bill, comma, the English teacher, comma, talks a lot, full stop. Now, the Mr. Bill and the English teacher are the same thing, right? I'm the English teacher, my name is Mr. Bill, that's it, same thing. So when you put things in parenthetical explanation, it's when you put commas around them so that you can make it more precise. So Mr. Bill becomes more precise when, with a comma, we then write the English teacher, comma. So when you've got this parenthetical explanation, the commas work like brackets. So you put in extra information that makes the first thing you mentioned, Mr. Bill, more precise. You tell me more about it. So if you're writing about sustainability, write something like, sustainability is a very important principle in the building trade. Sustainability, because it is important, is a current issue. And when you write because it is important, you could put in commas, you could put it in brackets. So to emphasize its importance, to emphasize why you're writing about it. So let's move on to the next slide. Oh, we're not going to take 5 minutes because we've already done that. Oh, there we are. So here we have the text that you have just looked at in the Word document I just shared with you. And you have had some time to try and figure out which order you think those sentences should come in. And I now want to explain to you why you came to the conclusions that you came to. So when we look at this text now, it's the same one, but of course, some of the words are in different colors. And this is where we can see, for example, that the yellow words are kind of synonyms. They are words that mean pretty much the same thing. So icy surfaces, snowfalls, fresh snowfalls, brief snowfalls, black ice, snow and ice, loose snow, and black ice. They all describe the same sort of situation. So in that sense, they are synonyms in this text. They kind of they name the same phenomenon. If we look at the green words, the same is true. Here, the green words also have a sort of theme, if you like. We've got this idea of tipped spikes, scattering sand, tires, special steel spiked tires, spiked tires, their spiked tires, non-spiked tires. So the green words, they're all about the tires in different ways on a car. And then we've got one or two red words. We've got the word however, and we've got the word therefore. They are different, which is why they're in red, but they also are interesting. And they're interesting because the word however makes us stop and compare. So, it's a lovely day, however, it's very cold. So we can compare lovely day with very cold. Therefore, on the other hand, is a logical step forward. 2 and 2 equal 4, therefore 4 and 4 equal 8. It's kind of a logical step forward. You don't necessarily have to explain the logic, but it takes us a logical step forward. So there we can see our clues, words which mean the same or are related to each other. So then we have to look in that text and try to find the topic sentences. And here they are. And we've got sentence 1. In England, the tungsten spikes would tear the thin tarmac. We've got that sentence. Then we've got whenever there is snow in England. And then we've got another one which is in a different color of blue. In Norway, where there may be snow and ice. So we've got 3 topic sentences. Now remember, when you're reading through your work, you are writing in paragraphs. Remember we said like 8 to 12 lines, maybe 15, but we also said one paragraph contains one idea. And when we look at these blue sentences, we can see that they contain an idea. And that means that they are topic sentences. That means that they are the first sentences in paragraphs. So what we had in our big text was actually 3 paragraphs. And this is something which I think is very important for you to recognize when it comes to your own writing, because 2 or 3 groups have sent me some work and I have given them very brief feedback, because I don't want to kind of mark their work and then have to mark it again in the exam. But this is one of the things that you need to look out for, is this idea of the paragraph, because a lot of people seem to be writing paragraphs which are too long. So they're not paragraphs anymore. They're something else. I don't know what they're called, but they're not paragraphs. So my point here is that you need to look out for these topic sentences. So we need to think in terms of sentence function. Now, we've done this a little bit before and talked about the function of each sentence. And we talked about it in terms of those blocks. If you remember, we had topic, sentence, example, explanation, things like that. Here, we've got things which look like topic, sentence, claim, problem, solution or consequence, and example. But we can mix and match. So these things might look different. So the function of each sentence. Okay, let's look at this. I'll read it aloud, and you can, as I read, don't worry too much about the words. Think about, what is this sentence doing? Whenever there is snow in England, some of the country roads may have black ice. Motorists coming suddenly upon stretches of black ice may find themselves skidding off the road. Road maintenance crews try to reduce the danger of skidding by scattering sand upon the road surfaces. Such a measure is generally adequate for our brief snowfalls. Its main drawback is that if there are fresh snowfalls, the whole process has to be repeated, and if snowfalls continue, it becomes increasingly ineffective in providing some kind of grip for tires. Okay, so that's given you a little bit of time to think about the function of each sentence. If we look at it again now I've colored it in for you, we can see that the first sentence is a claim. And that means that we are setting our topic. We are telling the reader what the next few lines of writing are going to be about. Then we have a bit of a problem. We have cars skidding off the road. This is a problem. So then the next sentence is some sort of fix it. And so is the next one. So we have a 2-sentence solution. And then there is a consequence to that solution, which is the drawback, which tells us that the consequence is also a problem. So when we think about a paragraph as a series of sentences that have a function, you have to kind of distance yourself from your own writing to think that way, which is, as I've said, a good idea to do if you can, and if you can't, get someone else to read it for you. So if we look at the next one, again, we have these sentences. Each sentence has a function. of course, because they always do. And I will read them aloud again so that you can think about the function of the sentence, not so much the content, but the function. In Norway, where there may be snow and ice for nearly 7 months of the year, the law requires that all cars be fitted with special steel spike tires. There, tires prevent most skidding and are effective in the extreme weather conditions as long as the roads are regularly cleared of loose snow. The tires grip the icy surfaces and enable the motorist to corner safely where non-spiked tires would be disastrous. So now we're looking at this again and we're thinking, what are the functions of these sentences? And you can see that I've used slightly different colors. I have to admit that on this screen, the slightly different colors are not as good as they were on the other one, but never mind. We have a claim problem, and that turns out to be sentence number 9. And then we have an example so that the reader can better understand what the first sentence was about. And the example is also a bit of a problem. So the next sentence provides us with a solution. So when you're reading, not only are you looking for grammar errors and spelling errors and things like that, but mainly your computer will find them for you, but you're looking at the content and the function of the sentence. And I think it's very, very important to emphasize. So I'm going to keep saying it again and again. And then in the last paragraph, which turns out to be a very short paragraph, we have 2 sentences, and the 2 sentences kind of sum up what we have read before. So we started in the first paragraph with the problems that England has with snow. In the second paragraph, we had the same problem, which was snow, but in a different place, Norway, and their solution. Now this last bit compares the 2 previous paragraphs, and England, however, that's our word that makes us stop and compare. In England, however, the tungsten-tipped spikes would tear the thin tarmac surfaces of our roads to pieces as soon as the protective layer of snow or ice had melted. We therefore, okay, this leads us to some sort of logical conclusion. We therefore have to settle for the method described above as the lesser of 2 evils. So there we have a summary, because we're looking back at what the previous 2 paragraphs, and a conclusion. I know it's not a conclusion of the sort you're going to write, but it's a concluding sentence. So I hope that by going through the text that way, that you're able to see the logic that you applied to the text when I gave it to you, to help yourselves sort it out into an order. And of course, if you didn't have the same order as me, you might have had different understandings of the function of the sentence. But this idea of looking for the function of the sentence is very important. And I cannot emphasize this enough when you are writing. Look for the function of the sentence. That is the key. If you can do that and you find the function of the sentence, not only are you helping other people in your group, but because you are looking at it in such detail, you're also in the process of learning to do it better yourself. And this process of learning how to write in an academic way it's a little bit like what you were doing in first and second semester with your construction projects. First, you had to know about foundations, and then you had to know about brick sizes, and then you had to know about rafters in a roof, and then you had to be able to build the walls, put down the foundations to build the walls to put the roof on. Well, it's a little bit the same with the writing thing. If you understand the functions of the sentence, then it's a bit like different rafters and beams. If you understand their function, it's a lot easier to put together in the right way. So that's the first thing that I had to say there. And I'm going to sort of follow up on it a little bit now, the PowerPoint, and then, to be honest, I think I'm going to take a bit of a break just for 15 minutes because I'm pretty sure by then that I need a break, and I'm also pretty sure that by then you will need a bit of a break. So so let's just take a look at the next PowerPoint, and this is revising. This is going back to something we've already said, but I just think it's so important that I want to say it again. So can somebody confirm that you can see my screen, please, just so I'm sure? Hello, is there anybody out there?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, thank you. So I've called this knitting your text, and I've got a little picture of somebody doing their knitting, because I do think that I remember as a child watching my mother knitting, and I used to think it was amazing, actually, because she took two sticks, one stick in each hand, and wool, and by tying knots using two sticks, she was able to make a sweater. And it was just amazing. Or she could make a pair of socks or a pair of mittens. You know, they're like gloves with no fingers. And then I thought to myself, well, actually, when we put words together, that's what we're doing. We're actually tying the words together in little knots. And when we're done, we have a long string of words. And when we have enough strings, we have a paragraph. So this is why I call it knitting your text. I think it's the same. You can take a whole load of words, but if you don't treat them well, they will not do the work that you want them to do. So what is academic writing? Well, I'm going to brainstorm it a little bit for you. And basically, it goes both ways. It's the simple explanation of complex concepts and relationships in formal yet accessible language. So that is, if I am writing my assignment like you are, I am trying to write about complicated things in a way that most people can understand them. So that is actually quite difficult. It's a difficult skill. And this means, of course, the reader must be able to understand. So why do I then write about smart art? Because basically smart art is all about pictures. Well, I have mentioned smart art before in previous presentations. And not only is smart art good for brainstorms, it's good for your writing. because it forces you to make complex relationships simple. And when you've done that, you can then write about them in your text, in the writing that you are doing. So this is obviously a Danish screenshot of my smart art in Word, but smart art's there in PowerPoint as well. But you find smart art, and then when you've found your smart art, you can discipline your thinking. And you do that by looking at the list. Now, I know the list is in Danish, but it isn't that different from the English, so I'll go through it in English. So starting at the top, you can make things into a list. Yeah. You can illustrate a process. You can think to yourself, is this process some sort of cycle? Do I go round kind of from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, but come back to number 1 again? Is it a hierarchy? Is there something kind of big at the top that can be divided into smaller elements? Is there a relationship of some sort? Is it a matrix? Is it a pyramid relationship where you have a hierarchy, where you have something at the bottom, then you move to another stage, and then finally you move up to the top stage? So the thing is, when you start to think about things as a brainstorm, for example, smart art is useful, but it's also useful in your writing. And this is where I think that having read 1 or 2 of your drafts, that you might be, it might be a good idea to put in some smart art diagrams so that your reader can better understand what you're writing about. If you follow this advice, you might need to change your writing a little bit too. So you might have to do a little bit of, you think to yourself, oh, good idea, we'll put in a nice diagram of how we think things hang together. But then, of course, you will need to either put in some extra writing or take some writing out and put some new writing in. But I do think that this is a good idea because it does make things easy to see. If we look at the left-hand side of the screen where it says hierarchy in Danish, the hierarchy diagram, for example, could be very useful if you wanted to show how your group idea becomes 4 different ideas. So you have sustainability written in the top one, and then you have 4 little boxes in your hierarchy, with each one with a problem formulation in it. And that is a good way of showing how the big idea can be divided into smaller ideas. Okay, you might also use that hierarchy. There are different ways of showing hierarchy, of course, but when you get it started. But you might use the hierarchy idea to show how you did your literature search. So you might say, we started with a quick and dirty search with these 2 keywords, and they would go at the top. And then we went to a Boolean search, which was more precise. But when we'd done the Boolean search, we realized we needed to do a snowball search. And after the snowball search, we thought we needed to do pearls on a string search, and so on. So you could illustrate your process and write about it. And I think that this is a very good way of thinking because it disciplines your thinking and it disciplines your writing. So then you start your draft. Yeah, that's the easy bit. And we talked about the introduction, and we talked about this introduction format. where you do these various these stages. And basically, this should in your work be about 1.5 pages, maybe 2. And we also talked about the conclusion being the mirror of the introduction, and therefore the things that you talk about in the introduction you also need to mention in your conclusion. So cohesion and coherence is doing your knitting. You are making life easy for your reader, you're persuading your reader you are right, and you're keeping your writing on track. And this is the way to do it. Here we have the same exercise that we just talked about, so I'm going to click through that very fast because I want to get to there. So when you are looking at your work and you are helping group members, trying to look at the paragraph they have written as each sentence has a function and they must come in some sort of logical order. And we've talked about this too, where there are different formats. And I think it's very important that you think about these different formats for a paragraph so that you use the paragraph format for the purpose that it is meant. In other words, you don't just stick to the same format again and again and again. You think, wait a minute. Do I want the straight claim solution example format here? Or do I want something that's a bit more complicated with an example? So the simple paragraph structure in an argument is important to think about, because in an argument, this is not an argument where I shout at you and then you shout back at me. This is an argument where we try to build a logical sequence of ideas which persuade somebody that we are right. It's that sort of argument. This idea of providing examples and providing citations from the literature that you have found, this is a very good idea. And I obviously, because I say it's a good idea, I also mean that I would like to see it in your work, because if it's in your work, I'm able to give good grades. And here we have a series of words that you might find handy, you might find useful. And the function of the words is in red at the top of the slide. And this PowerPoint is available on Canvas, so I'm not going to talk about them in detail. So now we know how to read through our group work. Our own work, yes, but we also know that we need to exchange the group work. Now, one of the things when you look through your group work now, and I'm going to ask for some screen sharing from you soon, but what I would like you to do for about the next 20 minutes is to find a piece of text that you have written, I'd like you to find a piece of text that you have written in your group, so each group does this, and then add a smart art diagram to it. And the obvious places are the places that I've mentioned, which would be the literature search, or the topic plus individual PDFs, problem formulations. Those would be the two obvious places to do it, but you can do it in other places too, because maybe you're describing a process, then use a process. Maybe you're describing a hierarchy, then use a hierarchy. Is there anybody who does not understand? If you do not understand, please send a sad smiley. So that must mean that happy people are going to send a happy smiley, because nobody sent a sad one. Okay, there are some, hang on a minute. I think I quite spaced out a bit. So we will ask that. No, not all of them. Just select one in your group. So you don't select all of those things, Vi. Okay, so you just select, for example, your literature search, and then you show me your literature search as a smart art. Oh, okay. Right, okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave you for 15 minutes to do that, and then we will screen share. Because this should not take too long for you to do, but I'm hoping to get some of these smart art diagrams into your work. I will be back in 15.